Tonight, a beloved firefighter gunned down in his very own driveway.
But does the evidence to convict someone all come down to a single deleted phone call? A brand new 2020 begins right now.
Get the med kit! He's still got a pulse.
Who would want Robbie dead?
That was the $1 million question.
Robbie!
He's got a fire shirt on.
I'm in panic. Please save my husband.
He's done, dude.
Damn it! Oh, God, no.
Is he alive?
No, he's not.
Oh, my God.
Robbie Dorr pulls into this driveway. He's ambushed and gunned down.
So that's the last image they got, is Robbie laying there dead on the sidewalk.
I don't know what, I know what happened to Rob in my driveway, but I don't know who did it.
They've got it all wrong. They're wasting their time.
Hey, Daddy. Do you know something that we don't?
They're pulling into the house after the funeral.
Right.
Lights and sirens, guns out.
Dogs barking.
This is what you watch on TV. You watch this happen to people on TV, not to your family.
Is that a normal thing around here that people delete phone calls and messages unless you have something to hide?
Exactly.
And just when you thought you heard the most shocking part, there was another part of it.
My husband just got shot. All I see is blood on the ground.
Tell me what happened.
All I saw was my husband's headlights pull into the driveway, and then I heard a bunch of pooping.
When did this happen, ma'am?
Just a few minutes ago.
Is the sailor still there?
No, I didn't see anybody.
Can you describe to me the night of that shooting?
I was getting ready to cook pork chops. I had turned the oven on. A few minutes later, I saw the truck lights come into the driveway. Sometimes I would go greet Robbie, and sometimes I didn't. It felt like it was just like a minute later. I hear these popping noises. It almost sounds like fireworks, but not fireworks.
Is this your husband?
I'm in panic because he's breathing. He's alive. Please save my husband.
Yeah, his name is Robert Dorr. He's a firefighter.
Elizabeth Fox Dorr, also known as Becky, is married to 51-year-old Robbie Dorr. He's a respected veteran firefighter. He's been at the Evansville, Indiana Fire Department for 28 years, works out of Station 1.
I'm up here at the intersection of Colorado and Oakley.
The body camera footage from the scene is unfolding in real time, and it's particularly raw and graphic.
Get the med kit! He's still got a pulse. He's starting compressions now. Stay with me. Heart's still pumping.
Some of Robbie's fellow firefighters arrive at the scene, and they're unaware of what they're walking into.
What the I just realized who it is. Robbie!
Connect electrodes.
And some cannot contain their anguish.
Robbie! He's done, dude. Damn it!
Oh, God, no. Oh.
Damn it! Does he know him? I assume it's a small department, man.
He's got a fireman shirt on.
Robbie's colleagues, in utter disbelief, are trying to collect themselves.
Let's get them up, honey. Hey, man, let's go back this way. Come on.
Let's go right.
I know, man. I don't want to be rude or disrespectful, but we got to get the fire out of here because that's one of theirs.
Evansville police are investigating a deadly shooting.
One person was shot and killed here tonight, and police still looking for a suspect.
Normally, the media will stage in a certain area. Police officers will chat with us, will tell us a little bit about what's going on. That didn't happen that night, so I knew that this was a big deal.
Police say that just after 7 o'clock tonight, they had several calls come in reporting shots fired. They do know who the victim is, but they are not releasing his name just yet.
We were just hearing that night that it was a firefighter, and by the amount of firefighters showing up to the scene, kind of confirmed to us this is a first responder.
Becky calls her oldest son, Nathan, to come and be by her side.
It's my dad. I have to get down there.
I understand. You're not going to this crime scene.
Okay, well then get my mother down here. Her name is Elizabeth Dorr.
Nathan is allowed on the scene, and he calls Becky's youngest son, Taylor, who then was 21, and is living at the house.
He was spam texting me, spam calling me, and he was like, you need to get home, and now Rob's been shot. I was like, is he okay? He was like, I don't know, Taylor, get home.
Where's my mom?
I was probably there, like, within, like, a minute or two. I just flew down the road. Really didn't feel right. Like, I was stunned, I feel like, the whole time.
Call me. Okay, let's go.
And we walked up to the house.
Still everything's being investigated.
Is he alive?
No.
Oh my god.
The first thing I did was I called out my mom's name, and I ran over to her, and we just started crying together.
How many times had Rob been shot?
At that point, I did not know.
But I imagine it was a pretty messy scene.
Yeah, 3 or 4 times, but I honestly don't know.
Can I get your name real quick?
The first thing you get to a scene, you want to talk to some witness who possibly saw it, and you do a canvass of the area as well.
You said you heard about 6 to 8 shots? Yeah.
I didn't know if it was going around shooting or something, so I turned all my lights off.
A gunman could be on the loose, and Becky says she was scared.
I was afraid to go out at first because I didn't know if there was somebody out there.
You said he doesn't have any
He doesn't
enemies.
have enemies. He's a firefighter.
He's a recluse. Whenever he goes to the fire station, he goes to his little room. He stays there until he's needed. The thing is, this is very odd.
We gotta look at all angles of everything.
Where's his daughter?
She's probably
Is that the dog?
Robbie's adult daughter, Lindsay Griffin, is also notified. Like many others arriving at the scene, she is unprepared for what she's about to see.
He was my best friend. All I could think about was I needed to be next to my dad. Like, my dad was alone on that concrete. He didn't have me. I needed to be with him.
Who shot him? I have no idea. No. I want my dad.
You go out there, okay? You can't.
They wouldn't even let me out there with them.
As Robbie is lying there, heartbroken family members and colleagues want to be near him, but Evansville police cannot allow their crime scene to be entered.
I've already told fire very respectfully that they have to stay outside the tape.
The ones who were called to the scene, they all knew Robbie. That's the last image they got, is Robbie laying there dead on the sidewalk.
Did the people who treated him actually know him?
Oh, yeah.
When a member of the service, police officer, or fireman has been killed, you step outside your personal attachment to the case, then you protect the integrity of the crime scene, that you were able to get justice for that person who's the victim.
They are turning their focus to gathering clues and asking questions.
That's not a casing, that's an actual round. That's a round, yeah.
The crime scene was very chaotic.
Found no shell casings.
Right away, there weren't any real solid leads.
I want to say I'm very, very little.
Robbie's lived in this town his whole life. He's a firefighter for nearly 30 years. Who would want Robbie dead?
That was the million-dollar question. Nobody could think of anybody.
It just didn't make sense.
Robbie Dorr was shot and killed outside his Oakley Street home.
This is a bad nightmare. Didn't have an enemy in the world. Everybody loved him.
Evansville police are still searching for a suspect. They are asking anyone with information, please give them a call.
The first step is trying to figure out what happened and the main players involved. The people who live on this street were telling me, I can't believe this happened here. Yes, we do have crime in Evansville, but nothing like this.
51-year-old Robbie Doer was one of Evansville's bravest, a second-generation firefighter who'd served his hometown for nearly 3 decades. And so what did Robbie do?
Robbie rode on the back. He enjoyed taking new guys in, showing them the ropes, showing them, what to look for, what to do in a fire.
And so when you ride in the back, you get to talk and guide the newer guys.
Yes.
Life sucks without him. Sorry, I'm trying not to cry. That was my best friend, and now he's never gonna meet his grandson. My aunt sent me a picture of my dad when he was a little kid, and him and my son are identical. Like, I mean, identical.
Robbie was a devoted father, husband, grandfather, and firefighter, and in addition to all those roles, he took on another. He was working full-time at the fast food chain Taco John's. You would think that being a firefighter would be enough.
Firefighting is not a career you're going to get rich at. Firefighters only work 10 days a month. 20 idle days cost a lot of money.
I quit my job to go be a general manager at Taco John's, and that's how I met Rob. Jokester that he was, always was there to make me laugh when I was struggling at the drive-thru.
Robbie and Becky known each other for 11 years before they started dating.
Robbie would have done anything in the world for her.
Rob was going to be the person that gave my mom a consistent life.
Who did you grow up with? You were in the foster system?
I was in the foster system till I was 4. Went from one foster home to another.
At the age of 4, Becky is adopted into the Fox family, as was Mandy Fillmore. You were 2.5, she was 4. Tell me about your big sister growing up.
We played, we traded stickers, we jumped on the trampoline, swam, got in trouble.
My father was a dentist. My mother was a dental hygienist, but she decided to stay at home with us girls and take care of us. They had a Christian handbell group called the Melody Bells.
You performed at the White House.
We sure did. We did twice. For Ronald Reagan for their Christmas party and for George W. Bush Sr. for their Christmas party.
This is you?
That one's me. That's Becky. That was at the 4-H fair. That one's Taylor. I think it's some baby shark.
How many times have you been married?
6.
Were any of them good decisions?
The 6th.
Robbie.
Yep. He would do anything for me. He was my best friend.
Rob was a great guy, so I'm thinking, okay, she's done. This is the one. This is the one that's finally going to work. They got engaged, and they planned the wedding about 2 months out.
He treated me like nobody had ever treated me before. Our biggest disagreement was he wanted me to quit working. And I wanted to work. But with him working both jobs, when he was off, he didn't want to worry about my schedule. And I'm like, well, but I really would like to work. Well, maybe someday. I'm like, you keep saying that, but, I can work.
Robbie was the type of person who always wanted people smiling. He would do whatever he could to make somebody happy.
Just kind of a sensitive soul?
Yeah.
Days after the murder, police spoke with Robbie's friend, Larry Wilt, who outlined how Robbie says he wanted to give Becky everything. Even, Larry worried, to his own detriment.
The guy had thousands of dollars in his safe before he got with Becky. All he wanted to do was make Becky happy, and it whatever it cost. She found a car that she had to have. He managed to get that for her. He borrowed money for them to go down to Panama City to get married.
Larry says the little things really started adding up for Robbie.
Added to his household, so his water went up, his electric went up. Everybody was on his cell phone plan.
Everybody's on his cell phone.
I know Robbie borrowed money from his dad.
Was your dad the kind of person who would get really excited about somebody new and then jump to a proposal and marriage?
I mean, you kind of have to think he was single for 10 years. So, in my eyes, he just wanted to be loved. And so when he got that attention, then, yeah.
At this point, detectives want to learn more about his relationships in the final hours of his life.
Robert Dorr walked into an ambush. What's going on in his world that would have caused this to come to his own home in his driveway? It was an assassination.
The medical examiner discovered that Robbie was actually hit with 2 different types of projectiles. There's only a few types of weapons in the world that can shoot both shotgun and pistol ammunition. A Taurus judge is actually one of the types of firearms that shoots both shotgun as well as solid projectiles.
The big mistake that the perpetrator made is by using a weapon that is easily identifiable.
The detectives did a search for any stolen guns in the area. During that search, they found a pawn shop close by where a Taurus judge was stolen.
Police are now on the hunt for that stolen Taurus judge handgun and any more evidence that may start connecting some dots.
You're looking for anything that might help you to find out what's going on in Robert's life.
Inside of the home, investigators found a 9-page letter.
Robbie Doer was a first responder here at the Evansville Fire Department, where he worked for nearly 30 years. And for 25 of those years, he worked at this station. For most of that time, his best friend was another firefighter named Larry Wilt. And so this was one of the busiest fire stations,
This
right?
is one of the busiest fire stations. The engine makes over 2,000 runs out of here, which for a city the size of Evansville,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. Robbie loved it. So he wanted to stay busy. 24 hours here, then 8 hours at Taco John's, and then, whatever else he was doing.
Robbie was a very, very hard worker, but his love life was a little bit tangled.
We're gone for 24 hours. So it makes it harder on family life.
In Becky and Robbie's situation, they were building on experiences in previous marriages they'd been involved in, knowing what they wanted and what they didn't want.
My dad seemed very happy at first, but then he started to feel insecure. He started to think she was cheating on him because he was like, she always deletes her text messages. Like, she never lets me see her phone.
Turns out Robbie put some of his concerns on paper in a 9-page letter he wrote to Becky a couple of months before they planned to get married.
In that letter, in his own handwriting, he's saying there was a problem.
Can't remember the last time you approached me to hug or kiss me. I wish I could put that smile back on your face and make you look happy. You brought me out of the darkness and made life worth living. I wish I had the money to take you everywhere you want to go. I want to get the house all fixed up to something you like. I want you to have friends, and I swear I will not accuse you of cheating on me ever again. I never want to lose you.
Why was Rob so concerned that you would cheat on him?
He'd been cheated on from my understanding, but so had I. I tried to reassure him that that's just not going to happen.
Had you ever cheated on your previous husbands?
No. Never. There was a friend that actually was the very first person my parents ever let me go out with. He would reach out to me, but just wanted to know if I was doing okay. I told Rob about it, and he felt that maybe something would be rekindled.
Okay. Did you see this guy?
No.
Becky's sister Mandy tells me that when it comes to love, they both tend to make miscalculations.
Here's the deal. If anything, if we make bad decisions, we make them based in love.
You and Becky?
We make bad decisions trying to love people.
Like the mistakes have been because you've loved people?
Yes. Yes.
You fall in love easily?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, I guess it depends on the person.
But in May of 2018, Mandy quickly fell for a charismatic stranger named Larry Richmond Sr. Tell me the story of how you met Larry.
I was working at the Dollar General, and he came in, and when he handed me the money, he made sure to touch my hand and, look me in the eyes and make it clear that he enjoyed what he was looking at.
And he's charming, too, in person, isn't he?
Very much so.
A few months after Larry met Mandy, he moves into her home. Mandy's daughter Mary was also living at the house.
Larry was always really gentle with my mom. I don't think I've ever seen her happier.
Tell me who Larry is.
We met him on Thanksgiving of 2018. Rob and I went out with them 3, maybe 4 times.
What was your impression of Larry when you had dinner with him?
When we first met him, he seemed okay.
Did you communicate with Larry Sr. outside of these double dates?
Only when he would call me and ask me where Rob was. But I always let him know when he had called.
What else did you talk about when you spoke?
He wanted to know what me and Rob did to have fun when we had our date nights. Then another phone conversation was because he wanted to know what Rob did, how he went about asking for my dad's blessing for asking Mandy to marry him.
Larry Richmond Sr., at the age of 17, was convicted of murder, spent 22 years in prison, was released in 2018, out on his own.
Did you know at the time that he had been convicted of shooting a 7-year-old man and killing him?
No.
He spent 2 decades in prison.
No, knew nothing about that.
Didn't know anything about his criminal past?
No. My sister said that he had been in trouble before, but that he was on the right track.
She brought that man to a Christian household and sat him down at a long dining room table and had dinner with everybody. It didn't tell a single person that he had just gotten out of prison for murder.
How quickly into dating him did you know that Larry had spent nearly 2 decades in prison?
He told me immediately.
Immediately?
He presented it like it was an accident. He just wanted to live a normal life and stay out of jail.
Well, Larry seemed to play down his crime to Mandy. In reality, he had pleaded guilty to knowingly killing another person.
At first I was like, oh, that's not great. But then slowly, my mom convinced us. She was like, he's a changed man. He was very warm. He was very nice.
nice.
Meanwhile, it has been 6 days since Robbie was gunned down. The family, Becky, Mandy, Larry, and large numbers of the community are now gathered to lay Robbie to rest.
We actually live streamed it on our website for our viewers to watch because there was such a community interest in this story.
There were so many people that I've never met, so many people that showed up.
This legacy of integrity is what the foundation of the fire department is working on.
The service today in no way will fully be right or have the fullest length of time and respect to honor Robbie.
Did you speak at the funeral?
Yes. He never backed down to trade shifts with anyone if they needed anything for their families. Lindsay, when you were born, I seen a smile on that man I never thought I would see again. Robbie spoke often of not wanting to spend his life alone. Becky, you made his life whole. Rest easy, brother. We'll take it from here.
Then, in a dramatic turn, just minutes after they pay their final respects to Robbie, police move in on 2 leads. So Larry was arrested when you came back from the funeral.
Yes, and they took me away in handcuffs too.
Hey, Maggie, do you know something that we don't?
It was a solemn farewell for Fire Robert Dorr. His funeral comes less than a week after he was shot and killed outside his home.
The funeral was hard. I will never forget the bells. I will never forget all of the speeches that were said. I can't listen to bagpipes anymore. I can't. I just can't listen to them. The moment that they handed me his helmet, I lost it. But it was absolutely amazing to see how many people were there.
But a discovery by the police turns this day from somber to suspect. So, you're pulling into the house after the funeral.
Right.
Lights and sirens, guns out.
Dogs barking.
You're getting cuffed and taken in. That must have been terrifying.
It was.
Put your hand right back. Police pulled Mandy and Larry over for traffic violation, but there's more to this story.
A traffic violation leads to this?
So after doing an autopsy, police learned that a tourist judge revolver possibly had been used to shoot and kill Robbie Dorr, which just so happens to be the same style of gun that was stolen from a pawn shop in Evansville.
So when they looked at the employees at that pawn shop, they realized that Larry Richmond Jr. was an employee there. They put 2 and 2 together that Larry Richmond Jr. was Larry Richmond Sr.'s son.
All right, there you go,
Larry Richmond Jr. is a 23-year-old Evansville native. As a child, his time with his father was limited to prison visits, and now after years of being apart, Jr. and Sr. are reconnecting.
So Larry Jr. is associated with a gun we think might be the murder weapon. That's a big step in the investigation.
Larry Richmond Sr. was taken in at the same time as Mandy, and the same time that Larry Richmond Jr. was.
Well, Larry, while we've got everybody, it's not just you down here. Obviously, we're looking into the Robert Dorr situation. He was gunned down in his driveway.
What they got to do with me?
Well, it has to do with everybody in the family. We're just trying to get everybody in here to see if there's just anything that could help us with this investigation. Do you wish to talk to me about lawyer president?
I have no problem answering any of your questions. I will cooperate fully.
Okay.
Due to my past, I have been incarcerated.
Sure.
I am on probation. I don't need any problems.
Sure, no, I
So
understand.
if I'm not under arrest, please get a hold of him. I will come back down here and fully cooperate. No problems at all.
All we're trying to do is find out if you guys know anything that could help us find this killer.
I don't know nothing. We go out with him. We go out and drink. Outside of that there, I don't know nothing.
So he understands what you should and shouldn't do when you get arrested by the police. So he's going to say, no, I want the lawyer. And there's nothing wrong with that.
With police unable to further question Larry Sr., they talked to his fiancée, Mandy. Her brother-in-law, Robbie, is the victim.
Where were you at when Robbie was murdered?
I don't know exactly when it was. Can you tell me when it was?
Last Tuesday. Around 7 o'clock.
Yeah, so
You're home?
All your kids there? Was Larry there?
yeah, we were all there.
with Larry.
Mandy says he was with me the night of the murder. And that's an alibi.
It's another weird question or awkward question that we ask everybody. Do you own the firearm? No. You don't own the firearm?
What about Larry? Is Larry on one? He's not around. What about the gun that was found in the car? The officers found a gun in the car.
When the police pulled over Mandy and Larry Sr. earlier, they found a gun hidden in the car. Now, it wasn't the murder weapon, but because of Larry's prior conviction, he's not allowed to possess a firearm.
You did not have a gun in the car? You alright?
So you pretty quickly understand that Larry is now a suspect?
Yeah, immediately.
Immediately.
Hey, Mandy. Do you know something that we don't?
I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Does it feel like a betrayal?
Is this what you watch on TV? This you watch this happen to people on TV, not to your family.
When they started to bring up this idea that Larry Richmond Sr. may have been involved, I think that was a situation for her that was very eye-opening and one of confusion, because she knew about Larry's past and she knew that he was trying to become a better person. At least that's what he was expressing to her.
Mandy is clearly in shock, but she's insistent that her fiancé is not involved in Robbie's death.
Amanda Fillmore was never a suspect, and police spoke with her. They found her to be telling the truth about almost every detail of her life, including intimate details with her and Larry Richmond Sr. and their relationship.
At this point, they had started, connecting the dots that, at least alluded to Larry Richmond Sr. and Larry Richmond Jr.'s involvement with respect to the stolen firearm.
We have 2 more people down here now involved in this case. And one is your dad.
Okay.
And things aren't looking so good here.
Okay.
What do you know about this guy?
It came up missing the day of or a couple of days before I started the pawn shop.
That's not true. I talked to the regional manager, I talked to the ATF guys. That's not exactly the way it's going down. The gun came up missing while you were employed.
Yeah, yeah. And I was sitting in the pawn shop, and then somebody came up and said there was a gun outside. And then we called it in.
So Larry Jr. is there when it's missing. And so now you know he's involved in this somehow.
I got some bad news for you, son. I think you're heading down the same path your dad's heading.
For detectives, nothing is adding up. So they make a drastic move and descend on the Dorr family while they're saying their final goodbyes.
So you watch as those 4 detectives take Becky away for questioning.
Yes. The look on her face was just like stone.
Tell us what happened. How this all went down.
At the funeral, police decided to question you again to pull you out.
Yeah, after we had taken Robbie to the mausoleum, and I was taking some flowers or something out to the car, they came and told me that they had a few more questions for me.
In my head, I was actually thinking, well, this is pointless. They're just wasting their time. They need to get out there and do something else. But, I'm thinking they got to touch all bases.
Becky arrives at the Evansville Police Department. Larry Richmond Sr., his son Larry Richmond Jr., and her sister Mandy are already there.
So basically, I wanted you to kind of take care of yourself, take care of your family, and then bring you here and go back, just hash through everything, every detail. Okay?
You really want to know about her life and their lives together. What time did she expect him home? Okay, what did you do that day? Who called you that day? Who did you speak to?
What kind of phone calls did they ask you about?
What phone calls I had had that day, the day of Rob's death. They also asked me what phone numbers were what, whose were certain phone numbers.
Well, the one we'd be interested, obviously, is the one right before your husband was shot and killed. Right? You were in our shoes? Yeah. Okay. And that's this number here. Do we know who this number is right here?
I don't recognize it.
There's a reason why detectives are so focused on Becky's phone activity. When they collected her cell phone originally, nothing looked suspicious, but they just received the raw data from her cell phone carrier.
When you start looking at the extraction data, you're starting to see that maybe what we can't see with the naked eye is still there under the surface. One element that we saw that Ray raised a lot of eyebrows was a deleted phone call from a contact known as Larry Ali. About 15 minutes before the 911 call that Robbie had been shot.
I don't recall talking to someone like 5 minutes before Rob was killed.
I've been honest with you from the get-go. That's all I ask of you is your honesty.
And I understand that. I don't recall talking to someone like 5 minutes before Rob was killed. I don't.
They had information that she didn't have, and so at this point, they're asking her questions that they know the answers to.
Becky, don't get yourself into something now you can't get yourself out of, please.
I understand that.
Okay, so take a deep breath and tell us who you talked to 5 minutes before your husband was killed in your driveway getting out of his truck in the back of the head. Because I'm telling you, the federal investigation and the FBI, we are looking into this as a federal crime.
They keep pressing her, and finally, after 90 minutes of questioning, she comes clean.
So who did you talk to 5 minutes before your husband was gunned down in the driveway? Becky, we know the answer. So who was it?
My sister's fiance.
The contact, Larry Ali, would later find out is Larry Richmond Sr.
Wait a second here. You spoke to Larry Sr., and he just got out of jail 11 months ago for murder. And now your husband's dead. I mean, if you're not chasing that pathway, you're not doing your job. It's as simple as that.
So what did you talk to him about? And do not lie, because we know his history, we know everything about him.
I don't know I know what happened to Rob in my driveway, but I don't know who did it. I don't know. I honestly don't know who did it.
You didn't even tell us about the conversation. We had to get to this point.
She wasn't being forthcoming, especially for someone that just lost their husband, who would want the killer to be brought in and justice to be found.
For Becky, I think nobody can prepare themselves to be accused of something they know they didn't do.
Rob told me that recently, the last time that we went out with Larry and my sister Mandy, that they had been talking about lights on the garage. And that Larry would be coming out sometime soon to do a motion sensor. With Rob, though. Conversation basically was, I asked him about the motion sensor lights.
This Larry put spot bullets in the back of your husband? Come on!
You understand why police were a little bit concerned when they saw that you had a call from a felon who had murdered somebody else and had just gotten out of prison for it, and that call had happened minutes before your husband was gunned down in your driveway.
I understand where they were coming from, but by the same token, I have a habit of erasing phone calls. I always have.
And as soon as you got off the call with Larry Sr., you erased that call, you're saying?
I erased it.
Who deletes phone calls?
I do.
Why?
Because it takes up space in your phone.
I don't think it does. I've never heard that before.
But there's proof that I do.
She deletes absolutely everything. And I know for a fact, if I were to send her, I love you, Mom, she would keep that. She would delete everything else. She will send a text message, and then she will delete it. I don't know why.
Is that a normal thing around here that people delete phone calls and messages?
Oh, no. I save all of my messages I save. Nobody I know does that.
Right.
Besides her.
Unless you have something to hide.
Exactly.
Why hold the conversation back from us? It was simply about a sensor light. When this young man asked you how many times, any more phone calls, any more phone calls.
I didn't want you to think that I was having an affair with him because I have not had an affair.
I think Becky's motive behind denying the call was to protect not only herself but her family, and more importantly, to protect the relationship that she adored with Robbie.
The truth is, I didn't ask or tell or request any point. Did I know someone was going to talk about him? Did I want to happen? No. I would rather leave you than Robbie. And this is a nightmare. And I honestly, I'm scared to death. I don't know what to do. And that's the truth.
After hours of interrogation, detectives say they can't find much else that connects Becky and Larry Sr. to the crime other than that deleted phone call. But back home, a mysterious message awaits.
He called and said he found a card with a note in it.
Every step was shocking. And just when you thought you had heard the most shocking part.
Because in this family, bonds are broken.
I called her in a fit of anger, a murder.
And hearts are broken.
Sisters don't do that to each other.
Let's go back further to the day that Robbie gets killed.
Get the med kit! Robbie, stay with me, stay with me. It had everything. Sex, murder.
Nothing in that conversation had anything to do with hurting anybody.
Why deleted it?
Because I typically delete all.
No, you don't. You deleted it.
Becky Foxdor was hiding a lot of information from police during the course of the investigation. I hear the pop, pop, pop.
At what point did you understand that Becky was beginning to be associated with your best friend Robbie's murder?
They've got it all wrong, you know. She has nothing to gain from this.
What do you think's going on between Larry and your sister?
My little sister introduced that evil to my family. Not me.
There is a trail that points back to you.
I'm a monster to everybody now. And that's not the person I am.
New developments tonight in the murder of a firefighter in Indiana, gunned down in front of his home.
My husband just got shot. All I see is blood on the ground. I'm in panic. Please save my husband.
Evansville police are investigating a deadly shooting.
One person was shot and killed here tonight, and police still looking for a suspect.
We have a beloved first responder, a firefighter who is dead.
Oh, God, no.
It's not supposed to be this way. He loved the fire department and just getting out there and helping people.
It was a solemn farewell for firefighter Robert Dorr.
On the day of Robbie Dorr's funeral, detectives say they make two major discoveries.
Larry Richmond Sr.'s son, Larry Richmond Jr., worked at River City Pawn Shop in Evansville. He's accused of stealing a Taurus Judge revolver, which, ironically, is the same style gun police said was used to kill Robbie Dorr.
On top of that, police say there is that suspicious phone call between Becky and Larry Sr. that she deleted and initially denied even took place.
Nothing in that conversation had anything to do with hurting anybody. It had to do with some stupid freaking lights, and it had to do with if we wanted to go out with them that weekend. And I told you.
Why deleted it?
Because I typically delete all.
No, you don't. You deleted it. And then you didn't tell me about it, and then now we're here. You're lying. And I'm not accusing you of lying. I'm showing you facts of why you've lied. Your story doesn't add up. Then, after almost 5 hours of interrogation...
Thank you, Becky. Good luck to you, okay?
They arrest Becky.
47-year-old Elizabeth Foxdor was arrested and charged with obstruction of justice.
Robbie Dorr's wife tonight is in jail on no bond for deleting a phone call she allegedly received before calling 911.
At what point did you understand that Becky was beginning to be associated with your best friend Robbie's murder?
The day of the funeral, something was off. You know, she wasn't grieving. She wasn't showing any emotion. And then when they picked her up for questioning, the light come on. And that's when you knew.
I thought it all started to make sense. Because things weren't piecing together. I didn't know why someone would do this, but then they brought her in for questioning, and I was like, it kind of makes sense.
I'm just thinking, you know, they've got it all wrong, you know. She has nothing to gain from this. She has no motives for it.
Police say Foxdor is not a suspect in her husband's murder.
Becky was arrested and charged with obstruction of justice, but she pleaded not guilty to those charges. So many are wondering who committed the murder.
Meanwhile, during Becky's lengthy interrogation, just a few rooms away, Larry Richmond Jr. asks to speak with the detectives again.
What's up? They said you wanted to talk first.
Larry Richmond Jr. initially told them that he didn't know anything about that firearm. After doing that, it was clear that Larry Richmond Jr. realized that they knew more than he thought they did.
I don't know anything about the murder. Okay. But I did take the gun from my workplace.
Okay. Where's the gun now?
Probably in Mandy's house.
Why would it be Mandy's house?
That's where my daddy put it.
Is that the gun?
Yes, sir.
We took this from your phone.
At Larry Richmond Jr.'s phone, there is a string of text messages where Larry Richmond Sr. continuously asks Larry Richmond Jr. about the Peacemaker, which we would later discover was the nickname that Larry Richmond Sr. had given to the Taurus Judge.
The interrogator say, "Do you want to be like your father? Do you want to go to jail for 22 years? Do you want to miss your kids growing up just like your father did?" It stops here. It stops now. And he's fully cooperative at that point.
He said his father, Larry Richmond Sr., had told him at some point, if anything, ever happens, I have firearms buried in the backyard.
Detectives head to Mandy's house and dig up 3 firearms with the serial numbers scratched off. They even discover surveillance footage of Larry Sr. walking to the backyard, allegedly carrying this tote bag full of guns, but the Taurus judge is not found.
When my mom, Mandy, was released, she was freaking out. Her fiance had buried guns that she knows he's not allowed to have in our backyard, which is where we buried our pet cat at some point. So that's also not great.
You didn't know he had any guns?
No.
Did he ever make you feel unsafe?
Never. He not once did that man ever make me feel unsafe. He just made me feel loved.
An Evansville man convicted of murder more than 20 years ago finds himself back in police custody tonight.
Larry Richmond Sr. is charged with multiple counts of felony weapon possession and is placed in jail. Becky is also in jail on her obstruction of justice charge. Yet police say there is nothing that specifically connects Larry Sr. and Becky to Robbie's death besides that deleted phone call from the night of the murder.
So while Becky is being questioned by investigators at the police station, her son Nathan makes a discovery at the home.
He called and said he found a card with a note in it. I told him to hold on to that card. I was going to call the detective to come pick it up.
I was going through condolence cards.
Okay.
And I found a card from Larry, which I then later found out that he had also been picked up, Larry Richmond. And it was a condolence from him and Aunt Amanda. And there was a little slip of paper, ripped notebook paper that said, "We need to talk," with his phone number and Larry.
Detectives start thinking, oh, he's reaching out to talk to Becky. And it changes everything as far as, wait a second, he's looking to communicate.
It looks like he'd written it on the corner of like a notebook piece of paper and ripped it out.
So it's more kind of the last second
thing. It wasn't written in the card. I think it was put in after, like Mandy and him signed it.
Okay.
Because he's the one that presented it to my mother. He gripped that thing all the way up until it passed into my mother's hand.
Why do you think he tried to reach out to you after the funeral?
I have
and
no
slip
clue.
that note inside the card that said
I
we
have
have
no
to talk.
clue. I was told about it, but I never got it. I never saw it. It was never actually given to me.
I don't think that there was ever pressure that my mom had committed the murder herself. But I think it started to make a little bit more sense that, someone who's already been convicted of murder could do it again.
Your Aunt Mandy and Larry, do you know anything about their relationship? I've only honestly met Larry a handful of maybe 5 times.
Okay.
Like Thanksgiving, Christmas.
When you interact with me,
He's kind of standoffish. I could tell that he's easily irritated. He was definitely well known with his facial expressions that he was upset about something that was happening.
Becky, Robbie, Larry Sr., and Mandy used to go on double dates together, but now one of them is dead, 2 of them are in jail. Detectives have already cleared Mandy of involvement in the murder, but they need to speak with her again.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think's going on between Larry and your sister? You're not the only one in this trip bag.
It was strange being in the house by myself. I'm in Rob's house, who is no longer alive, and my mother is in question now for his murder. I felt terrible about even just being in his house. I don't belong here. This is so wrong. Why am I in his house and he's not?
Mandy Fillmore has had a harrowing 48 hours. Her fiance and her sister are now both in jail. Since her last interview, police have discovered stolen guns they say were buried in her own backyard by her fiance. So detectives want to ask her more about Larry Sr.'s whereabouts on the night of the murder.
Let's go back further to the day that Robbie gets killed. Where do you go after work? Home, okay. Is Larry home?
No.
To your best recollection, where's Larry?
Mandy had previously told detectives that Larry Sr. was with her the evening Robbie was shot. Now, she seems to confirm that she has no idea where he really was that night.
Would your kids normally been home on a Tuesday night?
Yeah, we all would have normally been home. But I mean, every day he comes and goes. I thought he was cheating on me.
Okay. I can tell you us, with a lot of women, and one just walked out of here, and we had one in here last night. And they're all being cooperative, and they all have information that's positive to our case. Okay? So you're not the only one in this trip bag.
I have a core memory of waking up at 4 in the morning, and it was my mom screaming at Larry because he had a dating app on his phone. And she was screaming, like, who are these people? And he was just saying, baby, 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 calm down. Like, I forgot I had these apps.
That note to Becky in the card. When was the first time you heard about that note?
And the detectives. They told me everything.
Was this note in it when you gave her the sympathy card? Does this raise a red flag to you? For a guy that met your sister 5 times?
Flag number 2000.
Your sister is in custody for deleting a phone call that was very important. And there's a 5-minute phone call right before Robbie's murder. I mean, minutes before Robbie's murder. And guess who that came from? Larry. What do you think's going on between Larry and your sister?
I thought we'd been out with him 3 times.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
The detectives told me that she cheated. Yeah, I say they both cheated on me. Her more so than him. I didn't know him that long. She'd been my sister my whole life. Sisters don't do that to each other, so...
Mandy was the one that called me on the phone. She was crying, telling me about, oh, I can't believe that your mom was having an affair with my boyfriend.
Larry Sr. exercises his right to a lawyer and remains silent, and Becky still adamantly denies having an affair. But investigators are sticking to their theory that the two were having an affair and conspired to murder Robbie Dorr. A few days after Mandy's interview, they question Larry Richmond Jr. again.
Do you think your dad's involved in the murder of Robbie?
I hope not. I mean, he missed out on 22 years of my life. Why would he want to miss out on his grandson's life?
Has he ever talked about Becky before?
He said one time that they went out to Pistons. Yes, Becky was drunk and the firefighter dude was there too, and they was just dancing and doing all this, and Becky kept looking at him. He said she was cute and fine. He found she's your real sister. Like, what are you doing?
Is it possible that Larry was just trying to hit on Becky and that she didn't reciprocate?
No. I was like, what's up with Becky? Did you Becky? He was like, no. And then I asked him again. He was like, man, I had to. I was like, dog, you were down bad.
It was your sister. Was this person or by text?
My person.
So the last call that was on Becky's phone from Larry Richmond Sr. prior to February 26th of 2019 occurred approximately around January 12th of 2019. So there had been no evidence of any communication between Becky Fox Dorr and Larry Richmond Sr. for a significant period of time leading up to the night Robbie Dorr was murdered.
Never went out with him, or my sister by myself. Was offered to, and I said I didn't want to. I didn't want to go out without Rob. Then by February 26, 2019, Rob was dead.
As the Evansville Police Department continues to investigate Robbie's death, Larry Richmond Jr. and Larry Richmond Sr. head to court.
An Evansville father and son are facing federal weapons charges.
Larry Jr. pleads guilty to his stolen weapons charges and serves no time in jail, while Larry Sr. pleads guilty to multiple counts of felony firearms possession and is sentenced to 5 years in prison. And 7 months after Becky was charged with obstruction of justice for deleting that phone call from the DA's office, a shocking announcement.
Our top story tonight, charges have been dropped against the wife of a murdered Evansville firefighter 7 months after they were filed.
We thought here police were onto something, had made an arrest, and then suddenly they're letting her go. What do they know? They're not telling us.
It seemed like our life was starting to get more normal again, but it also kind of felt like it's not over.
The obstruction of justice charge against Becky may have been dropped, but Robbie's daughter remained steadfast in her opinion of Becky.
I immediately took possession of my dad's estate. I know this sounds really crappy, but I kind of just took everything. I had eventually sold the house and I let the car get repoed. I just didn't want her to have it. It's like, no, you don't deserve this. You don't deserve to be where my dad laid his head. No.
I just lost my husband. Honestly, the only thing that I wanted was the car that was given to me as a gift for my wedding from Rob. That was it. That's all I wanted.
At this point, police do not have a suspect. They do not have a murder weapon. And we're wondering, what is the next step?
In this case, the location data matches up with the surveillance footage. You're starting to see the entire picture.
It's been nearly a year since firefighter Robbie Dorr was killed in his driveway. His wife Becky hearing the gunshots. Robbie! So far, no arrests have been made. Robbie's murder, and for his family, the wait for justice is taking a toll.
It didn't feel like they were making headway on what happened, and that's when my anger started to really set in.
I had to do something and make a big change, so I decided I'd join the Army. I was gone for a year. It was hard because I don't know if my mom's doing okay.
Becky's son, Nathan, meets with detectives again, and he tells them that she already has a new man in her life.
So she's engaged again? Engaged again? Yes. And like we just discussed, it hasn't even been a year. Correct. She had two boyfriends before this gentleman.
Becky tells us she was never engaged, but admits she did date.
And I was waiting for her to say something to me, and I said, Mom, what's that on your hand? She was, oh, nothing. I called her in a fit of anger, a murder.
And on the one-year anniversary of Robbie's killing, a surprise announcement. Police name a person of interest in the case.
41-year-old Enzo resident, Larry Holly Richmond Sr. Richmond Sr. had a relationship with the Dorr family at the time Robert was executed.
Richmond came on our radar back in March of last year after police say that some guns were found buried outside of his home in his backyard. Now, as we've reported, Richmond was convicted of murder more than 20 years ago.
Authorities believe Larry Sr.'s cell phone could provide critical clues in the case, so they get a search warrant and seize it.
I'm John Carter. I'm a criminal investigator with the High-Tech Crime Unit out of the Vanderbilt County Prosecutor's Office. In early 2021, we were provided with a device that belonged to Larry Richmond Sr.
But there's a big problem here. Police don't have the passcode to get into his phone.
In this particular case, we applied the algorithm to the phone.
The computers will literally run every possibility of passwords you can imagine. That takes a long time.
In this case, it takes months. But then, they hit pay dirt.
One day we came in and a potential passcode had been found. I was calling everybody from the Evansville Police Department, letting them know that we had found the passcode to the phone.
Investigators are finally able to get inside of Larry Richmond Sr.'s phone to see what's inside of it. And what they said they find is pretty interesting.
We were able to see his location data that put him near the scene of the crime at approximately 6:35 p.m., approximately 20 minutes prior to the murder. We then had him traveling north and turning his phone off at approximately 6:54 p.m., and then turning his phone back on at approximately 7:20 p.m. near a gas station. During the course of our examination of the digital evidence, we discovered that Larry Richmond Sr. was using a police scanner app that's going to raise a lot of questions that need answers.
Larry Richmond Sr. listens to the police scanner app both before and after the murder. We were able to see that he was looking at the news. There's a popular Facebook site in Evansville called Evansville Watch. He was reviewing that. And also, notably, he was looking at photos of Robbie Dorr. There were a lot of cached images that his phone was saving from Robbie Dorr's Facebook.
Authorities recover a call log from Larry Sr.'s iPhone that shows he allegedly made several calls to Becky in the weeks before Robbie's murder.
In Larry Richmond's case, his entire phone, he deleted almost everything in it, but we can see everything that's also been deleted that hasn't been overwritten. So December 2018 to the murder date, they had 12 phone calls and some text messages.
Some of those calls only lasted seconds. If I answered, it wasn't answered and hung up. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't realize that there was even that many.
He is the fiancé of your sister. Are you thinking that maybe he was in love with you?
I never got the impression that he was interested.
Authorities get a tip from an inmate who, according to a police report, alleges Larry Sr. confirmed having an affair with Becky, and more importantly, even claims that Larry Sr. confessed to killing Robbie. What possible reason would he have to tell a cellmate after he was arrested for the gun charges that he murdered Rob and that he was having an affair with you?
I don't have an answer for that because that never happened.
You think his cellmate was lying about it?
He had to have been. I can't tell you something I don't know.
So, things that were happening point closer and closer to Larry Richmond Sr. being the person that we need to be looking at.
3 years after Robbie's murder, Evansville authorities finally make their move.
A short while ago, Larry Richmond Sr. and Elizabeth Fox Dorr were charged with the murder of Robbie.
Larry Richmond Sr. and Becky were charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They pled not guilty to all the charges.
When they finally told me they were going to charge both of them with murder, I was like, all right, let's go. We've got this.
They believe that she was part of the murder. At the time, I was thinking, they've got it all wrong. They're wasting their time.
What the prosecution is saying is that you conspired with your sister's fiance to murder your husband.
But I didn't.
Court TV's newest case, a good one, folks. The firefighter wife murder trial in Indiana.
It's the state of Indiana versus Elizabeth Fox Dorr. So why are they talking about Barbie?
He calls her Barbie, and then at the end, signs it you-know-who.
I'm not Barbie.
My name is Mark Phillips, and I am lead counsel in the trial involving our client, Becky Fox Dorr.
My name is Rob Phillips, and I'm the co-counsel. I've been working with my dad for 9 years.
We've tried several of these kinds of cases.
It's been a while in Vanderbilt County that I can think of this big a trial. This is a big deal because it had everything. You know, sex, murder.
This is the first case I've tried as the elected prosecutor, so the stakes were very high. Stan is the prior elected prosecutor and has tried hundreds of murder cases, so I knew just who to try this case with.
I think I said to her in the beginning, not totally kidding, if we lose this case, your career is over.
Since this is the first trial in the county to allow TV cameras in court, what is already a lightning rod of a murder case gets even more attention.
The public, these are details that they have wanted to know for years, are finally coming to light because there are cameras in the courtroom. Did it make it much harder that this was all televised?
There were times that I really wished that the camera was not on me. I have no control. I'm a monster to everybody now, and that's not the person I am.
Elizabeth Fox Dorr is charged with murder and conspiring with Larry Richmond to commit that murder. Her trial is scheduled to be heard first. She's pleaded not guilty. If she's convicted, she could face up to life in prison.
So we're now at Becky's trial, but because she is charged with conspiracy to commit murder, the jury is hearing a lot about Larry Richmond Sr., who has his own separate trial scheduled for next year.
Larry Richmond is not literally on trial here, but in a sense he is, because to prove there's a conspiracy and that she conspired with him to have her husband killed, we have to show that he did in fact kill her husband.
You won't hear one piece of evidence that says they were lovers. That's speculation and supposition. There is no evidence that Becky Dorr knowingly or intentionally aided, induced, or caused Larry Richmond Sr. to commit the offense of murder. That evidence doesn't exist.
Their actions were very much linked, and that's what makes it a conspiracy case.
Essentially what police and prosecution were saying is that you didn't pull the trigger to kill Robbie, but you set it all up.
No. I had nothing to do with it. Nothing at all.
A guard at the jail where Becky and Larry were held before trial tells of a mysterious note attached to, of all things, a packet of ramen noodles. And it's addressed to someone named Barbie. In prison slang, this is called a kite.
Inmates will tape kites to the top of ramen noodle packs and they'll give them to laundry workers, pretty much as payment to pass it on.
The inmate workers find the packet with the note attached to it and immediately give this to their supervisor, who's a correctional officer.
I ask that the witness be allowed to read Exhibit 91 to the jury.
Hello, Barbie. Just wanted to drop you a line or two. They will bring plea after plea. Don't fall for it. Keep your head up and go to trial.
He calls her Barbie, and then at the end signs it you-know-who, and he's talking about not testifying at trial.
A handwriting expert for the prosecution claims that the handwriting on the condolence card matches that of the handwriting on the ramen packet addressed to Barbie.
Will you also ask to make a determination regarding who authored the letter to Barbie?
Yes.
And what was your determination?
That one person wrote both of those documents.
And so we knew that it came from Larry Richmond Sr.
A Barbie letter. I didn't initiate that, and I'm not Barbie, so I don't. You get what I'm saying? I've never initiated any contact with him, ever. Ever.
The prosecution keeps the focus on Larry Richmond Sr. and where they allege he was on the night of the murder.
They have a phone conversation around that time that lasts for 4 minutes and 18 seconds, and then he turns his phone off. His phone's completely black with no data at all. The murder happens, and then his phone comes back on as he's walking into the Circle K.
Around 7:12 p.m., Larry Richmond Sr. Pulls up in a Ford Taurus and soon after enters the store and then leaves.
He knows the news that a firefighter was shot because he's listening to a police scanner app.
But remember, this isn't Larry Sr.'s trial, it's Becky's. And the state's case against her keeps coming back to the phone call she deleted the night her husband was murdered.
Just 15 minutes before Robbie Dorr was ambushed and killed, the defendant spoke with Larry Richmond Sr. on the phone. As soon as the defendant was finished talking to Larry Richmond Sr., she deleted that phone call. Were any other phone calls deleted around this date time?
There were no deleted phone calls on February the 26th of 2019 other than the deleted phone call from the contact as Larry Holly.
ABC News reached out to Larry Richmond Sr. and his attorney to ask about his relationship with Becky and the allegations authorities have made against him. They declined to comment, and Larry Sr. has pleaded not guilty to the murder and conspiracy charges against him.
The defendant in this case, Elizabeth Fox Dorr, thought she could delete a phone call and get away with murder.
Prosecutors play some highlights of the police interview Becky gave days after the crime.
At least can you admit to us that you withheld the information about who you knew that was on the phone call?
I honestly did not recognize the phone number.
The defense says there's no evidence suggesting their client planned the killing, and today they tried to hammer that point home by grilling the original detective in the case. There was a phone conversation that you asked Becky about at some point, correct?
Correct.
And you allege it's with Larry Richmond Sr., right?
It is, yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You have no idea what they talked about, do you?
No.
And you know who initiated that call, don't you?
He did.
Who?
Larry Richmond Sr.
He did. In fact, in your investigation, you don't have any evidence that Becky Durr ever initiated a phone conversation of any kind with Larry Richmond Sr., correct?
Correct.
The one big bombshell in this case, Becky's son is about to take the stand.
Pause and raise your right hand.
Did your mother ever talk to you about the firefighter conviction after the murder of Robbie Dorr?
Objection. Overruled. Could he be the one who actually sends her to prison?
It has been a day of motions and objections from the defense as nearly 10 people testify in the case.
Judge, I'm going to object to the form of the question. I object to the card for the same reasons I objected in previous hearings. I have a new objection based on his answer. Excuse me, I'm going to object. May we approach?
Fox Dorr and Richmond Sr. may have been romantically involved.
She has photos with him, she spent holidays with him, and they even went on a double date with her sister and Robbie Dorr.
There's been so much discussion about the nature of Becky's relationship with Larry Sr. Now prosecutors argue they have an eyewitness, Larry Richmond Jr., and he's got a secret to share.
Although she tells detectives she didn't know him well enough to form an opinion of him, Richmond Sr.'s own son is going to testify about a time he was with his father.
Do you know the defendant in this case, Elizabeth Fox Dorr? Do you have a number?
Yes.
She got into the vehicle and that's the first time you saw her?
Mm-hmm.
And did anything happen before she got out of the car?
They kissed.
They kissed?
Mm-hmm.
And was it a mutual kiss, or could you tell?
Yes, they both leaned in.
It sounds like damning testimony, but Becky's defense team goes on offense.
Your testimony is that your dad gets in a vehicle with a woman in March of 2018 within a matter of days of his release from prison. There's been testimony in this trial that Amanda Fillmore didn't meet your dad until May of 2018.
Okay.
Larry Richmond Jr. took the stand and told a story about seeing his father kiss Becky behind Robbie Dorr's home in approximately March of 2018.
If there's evidence in this trial that she didn't even live there in March of 2018, that'd put a dent in your story, wouldn't it?
Yes.
You didn't know who she was before your dad got out of prison, correct?
I may have my time dates.
Oh, didn't ask you that. Is that your sworn testimony here today?
Yes.
In fact, Mr. Richmond, would you agree with me? It'd be awful hard for your dad to be kissing somebody 2 months before he met Amanda, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Probably be impossible, wouldn't it?
Correct.
The prosecution says that you were having an affair with Larry Sr.
No. No chance.
Larry Jr. saw you kissing in the car.
I have never even spoken a word to Junior, never met him.
Now, Becky's son Nathan takes the stand.
What did you call Robbie? I know he was your stepfather, but what did you call him?
I just called him Dad.
Did you think of him like a father?
Yeah.
Did you know Larry Richmond at all?
Unfortunately.
Something Nathan said to the jury had me wondering, could money be a motive for Robbie's murder?
The evidence will suggest her motive was financial gain with her immediate interest in the firefighter pension. Did your mother ever talk to you about the firefighter pension after the murder of Robbie Dorr?
Yes.
When's the first time she brought that conversation up?
From my remembrance, almost the same night.
And how many times did you say that she talked to you about it?
We had a conversation about it daily, and I got frustrated several times, and I was like, Mom, there are procedures we have to go through to get to that point.
Why are so many people blaming you, even your own son?
I don't have an answer for that.
You know your mom was not a beneficiary for purposes of any financial benefit, correct?
I don't know who's beneficiary on anything.
If you were to learn that your mom had no financial interest as a result of Robbie's death, would that surprise you?
I mean, no.
Were you awarded any of Rob's pension?
No. I didn't want anything. I never asked for anything. Lindsay was his beneficiary for everything. I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't want anything.
The most significant evidence in this case was an eyewitness testimony. The most significant by far would have been the phone call that was deleted.
Why that night did you delete Larry's phone?
It is a habit for me to delete phone calls because Larry's not a person I normally talk to, so I delete it.
You're aware that your mom would frequently delete phone calls, correct?
All the time. All the time. I mean, she would delete a phone call right in front of me.
There is a trail that points back to you.
The only reason why is because I took a phone call, I erased a phone call.
Over 6 days, over 20 witnesses testified in this trial. Sons, a daughter, a sister, but not the defendant.
In this case, Becky didn't testify. Becky maintained her conviction the entire time that she had no involvement in this crime.
They don't want you to listen to the truth. I felt like I just listened to a screenplay of a crime novel that was based entirely on fiction.
And now, on behalf of the state of Indiana, I ask you to return the only verdict that's justified by the evidence in this case: murder and conspiracy to commit murder.
With that, you may begin your deliberation.
All right.
During the wait for the verdict, the jury is out and tensions are high.
You're sitting with a client. Her life is going to change in the matter of seconds.
And I held Nathan's hand and I closed my eyes. And tears just start flowing. The courtroom was tense in the moments leading up to the verdict reading.
State of Indiana versus Elizabeth Joanne Fox Dorr.
Utter silence filled the courtroom as the verdict is read.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of count 1. Count 2, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty of count 2 as charged.
I held my aunt's hand and I held Nathan's hand and I closed my eyes. And tears just start flowing. Like that is all we could have ever hoped for.
Did hearing the word guilty come as a relief to you?
Yes. Been 5 years to hear those words.
Did you think they would come back with a not guilty?
Yeah, because there is no evidence that I asked anybody to hurt, much less kill Rod. None.
Is there even a shadow of a doubt in your mind? Maybe she didn't conspire to murder your father.
No.
Not even a remote possibility.
No. She did this. I believe it was going in my body.
Everybody just has this idea that she's this villainous woman that was out for money. I want more people to see the actual good side of her. The kind of person that she actually is not adding up. There's something missing.
Because other than one phone call from February 26th of 2019, law enforcement gained no new evidence against Becky Fox Dorr over the course of the next 5 years to allege or show that she had any involvement.
And you sentencing Robbie's loved ones make emotional pleas.
I feel like my world is just crumbling down. I had nightmares for years and I still struggle and battle with them. She took my daughter's Poppy from her. I will never forget the scream, "No, Poppy, don't go." It crushed me. Still to this day, she talks to him.
I used to radiate with pride, saying that I was her son. I can no longer radiate with the same resounding brightness. I hope the greatest man that ever lived haunts nightmares, and that she never forgets that he truly did love her wholeheartedly. Thank you, Your Honor.
What's your relationship like with Nathan?
Up until evidently recently, he and I were best friends. Now, I guess it's not good.
The court finds the following sentences are appropriate on count 1. Be a sentence of 60 years. On count 2 will be a sentence of 30 years.
90 years in prison. So basically, she will be spending the rest of her life behind bars.
And the sentence?
I'll be lucky to make 30. I mean, if we're honest.
Did the sentencing bring you any relief?
It did. He said 90 years, and I was like, she's gonna be in there forever. Like she so deserves.
Is there a way you could rehabilitate your relationship with your sister Becky?
I love her and I forgive her. I know that she did a bad thing, and I wish she wouldn't have done it.
While Mandy is no longer engaged to Larry Sr., she still holds on to him in her own way. That ring you're wearing on your wedding finger, did Larry give you that?
Yeah, he got it for me.
After all of that, still wearing the ring.
I wear it because I love him, but I was also raised on Jesus and forgiveness.
The Evansville Fire Department has honored Robbie Doerr's memory with a plaque in the fire truck.
The truck was dedicated to Robbie Doerr, who is our most recent deceased active duty firefighter.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
I've relived that night too many times in the last 5 years. It still brings back all of the pain. It's now yours. I know. It's big. I'll never be able to call him. I'll never get to hear his voice.
What is that?
I'll never get to hug him again.
Becky Fox Doerr is currently in prison. She says she's planning on appealing her conviction.
Her alleged lover and the accused gunman, Larry Richmond Sr., is scheduled to go to trial in May of 2025. He declined to be interviewed. That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at 2020 and ABC News. Good night.
During the 1990s in Bridgeport, Connecticut, 4 women were brutalized, violated, and strangled to death.
This is a serial killer. He's leaving a signature on how he commits these homicides.
In a violent city where many murders went unsolved, the deaths were not immediately linked.
They were dead-ended. Cases had no suspects, they had no leads.
10 years later, cold case detectives reran the DNA evidence, and they got a hit.
Then the computer made the link and notified Bridgeport PD that there is a hit, and it belongs to this guy down in Georgia.
Drifter Emmanuel Webb used his charisma to conceal dark and destructive desires.
Webb is the smiling face of evil, always warm, never threatening, and yet something utterly horrifying is going on behind that facade.
He wanted to kill. He had opportunities to kill, and he didn't miss one of them.
Although his crimes went unpunished for years, a dedicated task force would eventually unmask Emmanuel Webb as one of the world's most evil killers. 2006, 40-year-old drifter Emmanuel Webb thought he'd committed the perfect murders.
These serial offenders, the narcissism, they think they're smarter than everybody else, and each murder they get away with proves it to them. They begin to think they're infallible.
In the 1990s, forensic science was limited, but it was only a matter of time before it caught up with Webb.
DNA wasn't refined, so you had this sample that was saved with the hopes of, at some point, technology would catch up. And it did.
18 years after Webb killed his first victim, the man the papers called the East End Killer would face justice for what he'd done.
He'll never get out. You know, I mean, that's a death sentence for him.
This killer story begins on the 9th of April 1966 in Vidalia, Georgia.
Emmanuel Webb's father, who was a disabled veteran, died when he was about 3 years old, and he lived with his mother.
Webb grew up with his mother and older sister in Mount Vernon. In 1984, Webb graduated from high school, and he and his sister traveled north.
He left Georgia to go and live with his sister in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
He worked as a security guard in Fairfield, which is an adjacent town to Bridgeport. I lived down the east side. The east end of Bridgeport was, I would call a working class area. People who lived there all their lives.
Emmanuel Webb was a hard-working man on the surface, with quite a charismatic manner, very attractive to women. He meets a girl called JD.
He met her when she was kind of lost, and he inserted himself into that situation and ingratiated himself, and they started a relationship.
In 1988, he and 22-year-old JD had a baby. But by this time, Webb had developed a serious drug habit.
There was a second child that came along. He was a problematic father. He didn't pay any attention really to his partner or his children. He was going on binges, he'd go missing for days.
Emmanuel Webb's behavior was not unusual in 1990s Bridgeport. It was a city in sharp decline.
In the 1990s, Bridgeport was suffering a crack cocaine epidemic and all that that brings with organised crime and gangs and the addiction and the need to get the money to pay for that addiction and the poverty that was around. That's going to have a massive impact.
It was also just a very violent city. We had high murder rates back then in our cities, mostly from either gang activity or drug activity.
In Bridgeport from 1990 to 1993, there were 287 homicides.
Most of the murders could be linked to gangs or drugs, but there were a handful which did not fit into this pattern.
In April 1990, the fire brigade were called to a car fire in the East End.
And I was one of the first patrol officers that responded. Once the car fire was extinguished, there was a body that was found there.
The body belonged to 39-year-old Sharon Cunningham.
She was found in the car with terrible burns to her face and to her body. She was partially clothed. She was nude from the waist down.
But this was no tragic accident.
She had been ligature strangled with her pantyhose, and then there was also secondary injuries, beating, blunt force trauma to the head.
There was no doubt that the death was an unnatural one.
It was mysterious as to why the car had been burned and how she ended up where she ended up.
Sharon did not drive herself there, did not undress herself. There was an attacker who planned this and who took every step of the way to try and wipe out the evidence of her crime.
Detectives suspected that Sharon had been sexually assaulted.
There was DNA found vaginally.
They found spermatozoa in her, and that was saved and preserved.
The evidence was bagged and recorded, but the investigators had no idea who Sharon's killer was.
A lot of the background work that was done at the time, knew where she worked, knew who she frequented, but there was really no suspect.
Years later, on the 28th of March 1992, police were called to another suspected homicide, just a few blocks from where Sharon's body had been found.
A 29-year-old woman called Minnie Sutton is found dead in her apartment.
Family lady, worked, people knew her, would go to the clubs every once in a while.
She has been brutally attacked. Her 3-year-old son is also found in the apartment, but he, thankfully, is unharmed.
What they discover is Minnie partially clothed, with her lower torso naked and no underwear on. She also has suffered stab wounds to her neck, to her torso, and to her stomach area.
A post-mortem revealed crack cocaine to be present in Minnie's system.
The cause of death was multiple stab wounds combined with strangulation. This is a person who died being choked to death while bleeding to death. This is not an attack that could have been survived by anyone.
Interviews with Minnie's family and friends quickly led police to a suspect.
Her boyfriend's brother had assaulted Minnie a couple of weeks before, and 2 days before the homicide, she'd woken up and he was kind of threatening her with a knife. This is the complex issue of dealing with these homicide cases. You can develop good-looking suspects right off the go, only to wash them out, down the line, and that's what occurred here. They were able to rule him out.
The only lead police had was evidence recovered from the crime scene.
The police investigators discovered 2 smoked cigarette butts near the body of Minnie, and they collect them and they preserve them.
In the early 1990s, DNA profiling in criminal investigations was relatively new.
DNA technology, as far as getting evidence processed and identifying a suspect, isn't as refined as it is now.
Another murder case went cold. A year later, in April 1993, again in the east end of Bridgeport, the body of Elizabeth Gandy was discovered.
Elizabeth was last seen April 16th, and then her body was found on the 19th. It was in an abandoned building that was kind of a crack house.
When her body was found, she was badly beaten.
Elizabeth's body is found with her breast exposed. This is suggestive of a sexual element to the case.
Elizabeth was a 34-year-old mother of 2 who'd looked forward to welcoming her first grandchild into the world.
One of her daughters, when the attack took place, was in hospital, about to give birth to a son, but Elizabeth Gandy never got to see her grandson.
The cause of death is determined as blunt force injuries and strangulation. She is killed being hit and also being choked to death.
The crime scene was a bloody one, and there were clear signs that a struggle had taken place.
There's blood spatter on the walls, up to about 6 foot.
Unfortunately, that building was an abandoned building, so a lot of contamination, a lot of people's DNAs could potentially be present.
There was blood and tissue under her fingernails that was preserved, again, in hopes of DNA analysis would catch up and allow that analysis to come with a match.
Witnesses were interviewed, evidence bagged, but no link was made between the murders and no suspects identified. No one knew that a violent sexual predator was targeting the women of Bridgeport. In June 1993, just 10 weeks after Elizabeth Gandy's death, Bridgeport PD were called to the home of another young woman in the city's East End.
Sheila Etheridge, once again, person that had her own home, worked, social life, family.
She's been missing for a few days.
She'd had a birthday celebration on June 25th. The last known contact with her was a telephone call on the morning of June 26th. Her body was found a couple of days later in her apartment.
Her father and a friend break into Sheila's apartment by climbing through a window, only to discover, tragically, Sheila's body already decomposed.
There are signs of strangulation, including hemorrhages, bruising in the neck. But the decomposition took away the degree of confidence required to definitively call the matter of death a homicide.
A search of the property found evidence that 29-year-old Sheila had not been alone.
There was a beer can found in the house.
A used condom that appeared to contain semen was discovered.
Police inquiries revealed Sheila to be a recreational drug user. They also learned she had a boyfriend.
She was in a relationship with somebody. Nobody really knew his name. They kind of was speculating who it was.
One of the names in the mix was local man Emmanuel Webb. Police quickly ruled him out of their inquiries.
They talked to him, but he is plausible, amenable, helpful, and charming.
By August 1993, 27-year-old Webb's relationship with his partner JD was over, and he'd returned to his home state of Georgia. He was living the life of a single man.
He was very attractive to women. I think several of the women who knew him said how extraordinarily attractive and charming he was.
By the summer of 1994, Webb was dating 37-year-old Evelyn Charity. On the 10th of July, Evelyn's colleagues were concerned when she failed to turn up for work.
A friend checked on her and found the body in the victim's apartment on her bed.
She's laying in bed on her side. There's a stab wound to the neck and there's evidence of strangulation.
She was dressed in a nightgown and like a housecoat, no underwear on, and the housecoat and nightgown were pushed up, exposing the vaginal area.
Evelyn had been sexually assaulted and murdered. When police attended, they found a chaotic crime scene.
The scene is crawling with neighbors and friends, while there's potential DNA and evidence could have been cross-contaminated. They had to quickly isolate the relevant from the irrelevant and protect the important from the unimportant.
The killer had stolen Evelyn's car and a gun. When they began looking into her lifestyle and associates, Emmanuel Webb's name quickly came up as someone Evelyn may have been romantically involved with.
The police track down Evelyn's car and they trace it to Emmanuel Webb. When Webb is confronted with the fact that he has Evelyn Charity's car and that she's been found dead, he does something quite astonishing.
He tried to talk his way out of it with, well, yeah, I was there and I had sex with her, but it was consensual. And she died accidentally, and then I tried to stage it to look like a homicide and robbery.
The explanation did not match up with the evidence from Evelyn's autopsy. Bones in Evelyn's neck were broken, and she'd been stabbed.
There are many accidental deaths that happen during sex, but you don't break your own hyoid bone by participating in wild sex, and you certainly don't bleed to death through a stab wound.
Facing a murder charge, Webb's legal team offered a plea bargain, which prosecutors accepted.
Webb was allowed to plead involuntary manslaughter. That's not an uncommon thing to plea deal, and it does save the cost of a trial, and it also saves all the uncertainty around whether you're going to get a conviction or not.
In 1995, he's given 20 years. As a result of his conviction in Georgia, Webb's DNA is taken for the first time.
At the time, there was not a national register, but Emmanuel Webb's DNA was stored on the database of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. In late 2001, after serving 6 years of his sentence, Webb was paroled. The 35-year-old was free, and he was on the move once again.
Emmanuel Webb is out of jail. In fact, he's not only out of jail in Georgia, he's gone back to Connecticut.
In the mid-1990s, Bridgeport's police commander set up a homicide task force to look at dozens of unsolved murders from earlier in the decade.
They were charged with probably looking at 207 open cases. And the cases were defined by evidence that was collected that hadn't been analyzed.
They started to do a linkage analysis on the cases. Are these cases related?
There were 4 unsolved murders where the female victim had been strangled. All had taken place within the same square mile. The cold case team wondered if they were looking at the work of a serial killer.
It is very often the case with serial offenders, and especially with serial killers, that they operate in what you might call a comfort zone. If you're going to kill somebody, you don't necessarily want to do it in a place you've never been to before.
So in this case, obviously they were all in Bridgeport, but more importantly, they were all on the east side, all within really almost blocks of one another to a large degree. So they're isolated sort of geographically.
It was an area that was seeing an increase in drug-related activity, gang-related activity, homicides.
Though detectives suspected a so-called East End killer was responsible for a cluster of women's murders, the investigation in the mid-1990s quickly hit a dead end.
The cases were going nowhere. They had no suspects. They had no leads.
In 2000, cold case detectives began taking a fresh look at the evidence.
There was a lot of forensic evidence at these crime scenes. The kind of forensic evidence that now a criminal would avoid leaving. So we had things like cigarette butts and nail scrapings and semen.
There was evidence that was collected that was never sent up to the lab because there was really nothing you could do with it. Some of the DNA is difficult to extract. They sat in evidence for almost 10 years until technology caught up.
The cold case detectives, they collect this evidence and they send it for DNA profiling.
It was a slow process, but when they finally tested in 2005, the State Forensic Lab's findings were worth the wait. Evidence collected from 4 of the East End crime scenes held forensic traces that came from just one person's DNA profile.
So the likelihood of it being the same killer is considerable. The police in Connecticut have all the DNA. All they're missing is the killer.
The profile was run through the US National Database, which since 1998 had contained the DNA profile of many newly convicted serious offenders.
They put the DNA into the CODIS system, into the database, which was obviously a very good thing to do, but nothing. There were no hits at all.
It was a frustrating turn of events. Bridgeport detectives had unearthed a serial killer, but they had no idea who he was or how to find him. In early 2006, the Bridgeport PD Cold Case Unit investigating the suspected East End serial killer finally struck gold.
They get a DNA match.
There was a hit, and it dealt with a death in Dahlia, Georgia, and identified an offender, and that DNA from the homicide in Georgia matched the unknown DNA profiles on the cases in Bridgeport.
The offender had been jailed for the manslaughter of 37-year-old Evelyn Charity in Vidalia in July 1994. 39-year-old Emmanuel Webb. In late 2005, Webb had once again been on the wrong side of the law in his home state of Georgia.
And in November that year, he's arrested on drug possession and also parole violation because he's left the state in which he was supposed to be serving his parole. And so the police arrest him.
Investigators in Georgia took a DNA sample from Webb, which now revealed him to be the #1 suspect for the East End murders in Connecticut.
So now we have a DNA hit, and then we have a suspect that's incarcerated for a similar type of crime.
Hearing the details of Evelyn Charity's death, Bridgeport detectives realized they were looking at a near-identical homicide to the ones they were investigating.
It had both behavioral and forensic linkages.
There was too much of a commonality there.
Bridgeport detectives visited Webb to verify his DNA link to their cases.
So then they had to get a warrant together to get a confirmatory DNA sample. They swab him, get it, and once that came back as positive identification of him, then the case moves forward.
With Emmanuel Webb safely locked up for the time being for his parole violation in Georgia, Bridgeport detectives had time to learn everything they could about their suspect.
Who the hell is this guy, and could he have killed these women? And it didn't take long to realize he literally had lived in Bridgeport the whole time that this happened.
He had ties to Georgia, had family in Connecticut. He was transient. He would go back to Georgia, come back.
He lived in Bridgeport on the east side, many times within blocks of where these homicides occurred. All these women lived on the east side of Bridgeport. They all knew one another. They all were using crack.
By charting Webb's network of friends, the places he frequented, and the lifestyle he lived, investigators were able to establish a strong likelihood he knew all of the victims.
When our officers and detectives went out there to do the canvassing and get background information, everybody knew who he was.
There were witnesses who'd seen Webb socializing with some of his victims.
There was a street there called Stratford Avenue, which had a number of clubs on it and bars. People used to go in there, so they saw him. They knew who he was. Hey, you know what? We saw him with some of these females.
Though the DNA evidence was compelling, prosecutors feared it would not be enough to secure a conviction.
In order to actually produce a viable case in the courtroom, you need much more.
They reached out to the FBI. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has a behavior analysis unit. It's called BAU.
FBI agent Greg McCrary was assigned to the case.
I was contacted by the state attorney in Connecticut about taking a look at a series of cases that they believed were linked. How could his DNA be at every crime scene and him not be involved?
Agent McCrary was asked if he could identify features of the murders that linked them to one killer. He looked at what he called backcloth.
Backcloth is the overall context in which the cases occur. We're talking about geography, we're talking about victimology, and by that we're talking about socioeconomic issues, commonalities among the victims as well. One we looked at the method and manner of death, strangulation was involved.
Strangulation is a relatively unusual method of homicide.
I did a statistical analysis. In the homicides in Bridgeport from 1990 to 1993, there were 287 homicides. Of those, 7 involved strangulation. 3 of those dealt with male victims, so now we're down to 4 females that were killed by strangulation. One of those cases was solved.
The 4 victims were Sharon Cunningham, Minnie Sutton, Elizabeth Gandy, and Sheila Etheridge.
Strangulation is a very close-up, personal way to kill somebody. When men kill each other, they rarely strangle each other. When men kill women, it's a bit more common that they will use strangulation.
Another pattern McCrary identified was that each of the women had suffered additional violence.
Other injuries inflicted on the victims that were unnecessary to cause death. We had these secondary injuries, in many cases, that involved blunt force trauma to the head or knife wounds and incise wounds and lacerations.
Minnie Sutton was the one that was really mutilated. There were stab wounds there, not fatal stab wounds, but slashings.
She was stabbed in the neck, the left-hand side of forehead.
From a behavioral aspect, looking at what an offender does that he doesn't have to do is very compelling because it goes to that individual perpetrator and no one else.
Another hallmark of the killer was that each victim had likely been sexually assaulted.
The clothes of the victims had been moved to expose sexual parts of their bodies. So that's quite an obvious sign to us that there's a sexual motivation here.
Semen was recovered from the body of Elizabeth and from a condom near to Sheila. 11 years later, DNA from that condom helped link Emmanuel Webb definitively to the scene.
And that is a key piece of evidence that was identified, collected, properly documented, stored, and eventually it was analyzed. And that gave us DNA material of the person who used that condom. It was a magnificent piece of police work.
Along with the physical links and commonalities between the crime scenes, detectives discovered Webb's behavioral patterns were a fit for the crimes.
The one thing there that we did learn from individuals that had relationships with him, it's rough, right? It was domestic violence, but it was sexual in nature. It was a pattern of behavior that for him, that was his gratification. You know, it was sexual force, dominance, and violence.
This knowledge suggested a possible motivation for the murders.
He either covered up his sexual acts by trying to kill them, or he knew he was going to kill them and he wanted to have sex with them anyway.
Having found links between the deaths in Bridgeport, prosecutors next needed to link them with the one Webb had already been convicted of: the manslaughter in Vidalia of Evelyn Charity.
The victim in Georgia died of ligature strangulation, and there was cocaine in that victim, and these other victims had cocaine in their system as well, or were known to be doing crack cocaine. And there was injuries secondary to the strangulation that were unnecessary in the Georgia case and the other ones.
The forensics and the profiling made for a strong case, but leaving no stone unturned, the team revisited the files to do some old-fashioned detective work.
In cold case homicides, you're always looking for new evidence.
It's one thing to make an arrest, but then to get a conviction proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you want to make sure that you've got all the information there. These detectives were phenomenal detectives. They were very, very self-motivated. They looked at it, and they had to go back. You're talking going back 10 years. And, finding witnesses, going back, talking to family members.
Among those investigators tracked down were people who'd known 29-year-old Sheila Etheridge, who'd been found murdered in June 1993. They finally confirmed that her mystery boyfriend was none other than Emmanuel Webb.
When they started doing their background work, two-edged sword here, right? Hey, yes, he was in a relationship where it kind of got fleshed out. The family said, hey, they knew it was a rough relationship, it was sexual in nature, and then he was abusive towards her.
Investigators revisited the file of Elizabeth Gandy, whose body had been found in an abandoned building. The walls were spattered with blood, not all of which was hers, suggesting her attacker may have been injured himself.
The other lead that we suggest in those cases is going to the local emergency rooms or primary care centers and ask if anyone has come in with a laceration wound to be stitched up or fixed up.
Detectives dug deep to find out whether Webb had attended a medical facility around the time of Elizabeth's murder.
Remarkably, it was discovered that Webb had gone to hospital the following day.
He was being treated at Bridgeport Hospital for cuts, scrapes, abrasions that were indicative of a struggle.
And that turned out to be his blood at the crime scene, on the victim's clothing and on the wall. So when you begin to put all of this together, I thought it made a very compelling case.
In June 2006, Emmanuel Webb, already incarcerated in Georgia, was charged by Bridgeport police officers with the April 1993 murder of Elizabeth Gandy. Convinced he was responsible for 3 more deaths, prosecutors prepared their case, but Webb was not going down without a fight. On the 14th of February 2007, 40-year-old Emmanuel Webb was extradited to Connecticut from Georgia. He arrived with his ankles and wrists in shackles.
They were able to get 4 warrants for his arrest for 4 of the homicides, and he came up to Bridgeport to stand trial while he was still incarcerated in Georgia.
As Webb waited in a Connecticut prison for his trial to begin, there was months of legal wrangling over how the 4 murders would be tried.
The prosecution wanted to basically have one trial for all 4 cases.
Agent Greg McCrary's analysis connecting the crime scenes was central to their argument.
Early April 2008, I was contacted by the prosecutor in Bridgeport. They wanted to try these cases together, and they asked if I would be willing to render an opinion.
The aim was to show that the 4 murders had enough in common to be tried in a single court case.
They're tying it together, showing the signature events and why there's a commonality there. It's not a coincidence, it has to be from the same individual.
The only people believing they shouldn't be tried together was Webb and his defense attorneys.
They wanted each case to be done individually because there was different evidence, and they also felt that if you did them all at once, it would be easier for a jury to just convict them on all of them.
I ended up testifying on May 1st in a hearing before a judge in Connecticut on the cases, and I was linking actually the Georgia case with 4 cases in Bridgeport. At the end of the day, the judge excluded one of the Bridgeport cases.
Webb would not be tried for the June 1993 murder of Sheila Etheridge.
Sheila exhibited enough decomposition to render the pathologist unable to determine the cause and manner of death with scientific precision and accuracy. So although we found hemorrhages to her left eye, although we found bruising to her neck, we couldn't really determine that this was due to a homicide.
Webb DNA was at the crime scene, on the beer can and in the condom, but neither could be deemed incriminating.
He was in a relationship with her, so it wouldn't be unusual to find a beer can empty there. They couldn't really tie him there as closely and as tightly as they did the other 3 cases.
The judge erred on the side, I guess, of caution and took that one out, but kept the other 3 in, which was still a win.
It was a devastating blow for Sheila Etheridge's loved ones. 42-year-old Emmanuel Webb would be tried for the murders of Minnie Sutton, Sharon Cunningham, and Elizabeth Gandy. But at the last minute, as detectives and prosecutors finessed their arguments ready for trial, Emmanuel Webb changed his plea.
They were ready to go to trial, but Webb pled out. He didn't want to go to trial because the evidence then was overwhelming.
On the 22nd of May 2008, Emmanuel Webb cuts a plea deal with the Connecticut authorities.
Webb pled no contest to the 3 murders. A month later, he was sentenced. The state had not proven the aggravating factors, such as rape or kidnap, needed to make the murders death penalty cases.
He was sentenced to 60 years in prison, 20 to life on each of the 3 cases, as I understand it, to run consecutively, one after the other.
So basically it's a life sentence.
First, however, he would return to Georgia to serve out his time for the parole violation there. His sentence at Hancock State Prison ended in July 2014.
As of then, he was turned over to Connecticut Corrections to serve the 3 sentences for those homicides.
When Webb's sentence was handed down in a Bridgeport court on the 25th of June 2008, there was applause from his victims' loved ones. It had taken 18 years to get them justice, and the dedication of a committed team of detectives.
It was tireless work, and for me, as a supervisor, as a commander of that unit, you no more pride than to have distinguished detectives do what they did and bring these cases to a successful culmination.
Webb was a dangerous predator who hid in plain sight.
Emmanuel Webb was a man who was actually the devil, hiding around the corner or in the coffee shop, and you never suspected him. He remains, for me, literally one of the most dangerous killers in America, because he's shown no remorse, no reticence, no regret, no conscience. That makes him a very evil man indeed.
It took many years to bring Webb to justice, but for those involved, it was worth the wait.
I've had cases that have taken over 20 years to solve, but it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as you can solve the case, it's the perseverance. It's getting justice for the victims and holding people accountable for their behavior.
You'd always get calls from family members, on the anniversary dates of the homicide or their birthdays. It's not going to change anything, but you're bringing them a little bit of closure, and they get justice. That's what you try to do. You try to bring justice to the family and to the victim themselves.
Emmanuel Webb was known as a man who liked to party and a man who could charm his way into women's lives. But he abused their trust, murdering his victims in terrible acts of sexually motivated violence. After escaping justice for years, he was finally unmasked as one of the world's most evil killers.
If guys that are in this business tell you that they don't carry it home with them, that's bullshit. This job can break you if you let it. The man I was then and the man I am now are two different people. That case became an obsession to me. The damn toughest case I had for so many reasons. The violence, the death, it wears on the soul. The Marlon Ginn case would not go away. It was with me constantly. So you want to talk about Carol Marlon and Maggie Ginn? I was working midnight shift. I'd gotten Officer of the Year. I think I was at a point in my career that I couldn't be beaten. I had a huge ego. Got absorbed in my work, and I let my work control me.
What's up, fella? Got a call from this guy reported his wife missing. Been about 4 hours since he's seen her. 4 hours? Waste my time with 4 hours for her. Husband says she received a threatening letter at work, gives him cause for concern. Where's she work? Astor and Leeds. Friend's contractor? Yeah, they both work there. Says she went out with a friend after work, didn't come home. All right. Probably be home by the time I get there.
I didn't mind working midnight shift. It could wear on you, but nothing was better from a detective standpoint than having something to work on.
These are people we don't usually follow up on missing persons reports after only 4 hours. My wife said she was going to be home at 8:30. Now, I asked her not to go, and she went anyway. Ever since she got that letter, I worry. I was told it was a death threat of some kind. Yeah, it was pretty much a death threat. I read it. Do you have the letter? It was turned into security at Astor and Lee. Were they able to tell who sent it? I could maybe get you a copy tomorrow morning. Yeah, that'd be fine. Good. What's your wife's name? Carol Marlon. Carol Marlon. Or Coleman Mom. She was out with her friend Maggie. They used to work together. You know the name of the restaurant? They weren't sure, so no. Maybe I'm overreacting. I know it sounds crazy. You got an address for Maggie? I don't believe I do. She's my wife's friend. I barely know her. Can you speak when, to be honest with me? Anything I need to know about? Any marital problems? Anything like that? Any reason to think your wife might want to leave you? Nothing. We're happy. I mean, I get it. 4 hours. But this is really not like her. Try calling her friend. Maggie, yeah. No answer. Okay. You got that number for me? Here it is. All right, I'll get back to the office, look into it. Call you in a bit. Thanks, I appreciate it. Car. I'm sorry, what? What kind of car does your wife have? A Buick Regal, blue. Right. Okay, thank you.
I've seen this kind of thing before in cases. Wife leaves, husband leaves, and they'll stay gone for a few days, sometimes a week, sometimes months. I called the number that Deke had given me for Maggie Ginn twice and went to a recorded message. We checked the hospitals, checked the jails. There was no word.
Ed has patrol look into that blue Buick. Nothing.
Nothing. I got the Ginn address.
Want me to send a car?
Nah, it's okay, I'll go.
All right, then, see you later. Hey, Marnie.
Luso? You know he can't keep his mouth shut.
Trust me, I know.
How's your night?
It was quiet. You?
Hot. Boring.
Tell me about it.
Listen, I'm wiped. See my place?
I gotta finish this missing persons first.
I'm not sure Marnie knew what she was getting into. Maybe not so much about the job, but, about me and the way that I, the intensity that I had with the job. At around
Around 7 in the morning, I got the address for Maggie from security where she worked. I remember, to this moment, turning onto the street. There was Carol Marlin's car. Down in my gut, I said, this is not good. We had a problem. I knew whatever it was bad. Person case just turned into a double homicide. In my career, I've dealt with a lot of death. When you actually are the first on the scene, you never, ever get used to that.
Sorry. What do we got? Didn't have time to go home. Double homicide. No weapons I could find, no forced entry. We know what the Vicks are yet? Yeah. Pretty sure Carol Marlin. Husband called them missing persons. She got the worst of it. The other one's Maggie again. Homeowner. Why don't you go ahead and lock off the perimeter? Canvass the area, see if anybody's heard or seen anything. And step inside with me.
It's kind of chilling to think about it right now, but I remember standing in there thinking, they were comfortable with whoever did this. Both of them were, because they were ambushed. Whoever did this knew one or knew both of them.
Patty? Yeah.
There's a reason that Carol Marlin was beaten in the head and the face like she was. There's a reason that there's no forced entry. It doesn't really look like it was a struggle. And there's a reason that there's a piece of paper in Maggie Ginn's hand.
That's my wife's car, all right? Is my wife in there? That's just, okay, I'm okay.
Some people are good at being emotional, but I remember with Peak, I wasn't having a good feeling about it.
see a few questions yet for that. How were they killed? We're still determining that. Can you think of anybody that want to hurt your wife? I don't know. There's this guy at work. Carol and I both work with him. He's got issues with me. What guy? Barry Webb. He thought I was having an affair with this woman we both know, Linda Mills. Were you? No, we're just friends. Barry's the one in love with her. He thought I was coming between them. Why would you think that? And I went on a business trip and we had a great time as friends. She told Barry about the trip and suddenly he's acting all weird with me. And then she gets this death threat. You said that you had no idea who sent the letter, but now you're saying that you think it might be Barry Webb. Is that what you're saying? I didn't want to accuse the guy. I don't have any proof. He would say things like under his breath. What kind of things? Stuff like, you'll never get it. You happen to get that letter from me? Not yet. It's okay. I'll get it. Any reason to think that Barry and your wife might have been, It's crossed my mind. She had an affair a few years back. I forgave her. So yeah, it's possible. Okay. All right. Hang tight. You said you had no idea where Maggie Kidd lived? Yeah. I got her address from security at work. Yeah. I wanted to help look for Carol.
Okay. Peluso notified the Ginn family and talked with them, and it was hard. They were very upset. Maggie Ginn, she was a widow, had raised 3 kids, grandkids. Carol Marlin was 46 years old, doted over John, worked hard, was just a beautiful person, totally innocent victims.
Son gave them to me. Said they're best friends, did everything together. Damn shame.
I'm gonna find the SOB that did this. We're gonna figure this out.
All right, Megan's son was robbed. Thought maybe whoever killed his mother might have gotten the address from his lockbox. They robbed about 10 grand in jewelry from him. Could have been a robbery gone wrong.
I doubt it. Look into that.
One neighbor said he saw a very tall, thin man run across his lawn around the same time the murders took place. Said he came down to the curb to get a better view, but the man disappeared through some trees near Maggie's house.
You get a murder weapon?
No.
So we got 2 dead bodies. We got no witnesses, no murder weapon, no prints. Nothing. There's no way somebody kills 2 people and doesn't leave a trace. Come on, I need a murder weapon.
In processing the scene, we didn't find anything missing from Maggie Ginn's house. I searched it twice. We didn't find anything of significance. We've got to retrace the steps, and we've got to concentrate and search to find the murder weapon. We were looking for any instrument, maybe a hammer or something similar that may have been used. Some heavy instrument that could have been held in the hand and used at close range.
Hey guys, I think I found something. We found the pipe in the woods behind the victim's home. Now, I know that could have caused the type of injuries we found on both our victims.
Well, judging by the size and weight of the pipe, I agree. If there's blood residue or prints, I'll let you know.
I appreciate it.
Both victims suffered significant blunt force trauma, and it appeared that an instrument like a hammer or something similar to a hammer was used to inflict the injuries. I knew that I had to find physical evidence.
Pipe's not our weapon. Nothing ties it to the crime. No blood, prints, no DNA. Pipe's been sitting in the ground for years.
I needed to find that murder weapon. I had to regroup. And we're back to square one.
Yeah, Barry Webb, please. Got in?
Barry Webb's name is on the invoice at the crime scene. We got Pete talking about him.
No, I'll go back. Thank you.
And then I'm not able to get in touch with him. That's what I talked to coworkers about, Pete and Barry Webb. couple of them told me that Peake had described how Webb was abusive. Peake was afraid of him.
You buying that break and entering story Webb selling? You buying Peake's story?
Born, I ain't buying anything from anybody till I get some hard evidence.
Like a Webb?
Yep, that'd be nice. You get that threat note we asked for?
We're still looking.
Who the heck's Barry Webb?
Pluzo. That's the same invoice as against hand. Thank you. 09.
Linda Mills, she was stuck in the middle of it.
Detective Herman?
Yeah.
I'm Linda Mills. I wanted to talk to you about Barry Webb.
This is something straight out of a damn movie.
Look, Barry would never hurt anyone.
You and Barry close?
Yes, but we're just friends.
How did Barry feel about John Peake?
I suspect he hated John. Look, I turned John down a number of times. He kept hitting on me. His wife Carol hated me because she thought that John and I were a thing, and...
Were you?
Absolutely not.
Just be honest with yourself. Is Barry in love with you? I'll take that as a yes.
Barry would never be capable of murder. Look, he was just trying to get John to leave me alone.
She was definitely trying to help Barry Webb.
Barry Webb?
Yeah, that's me.
Detective Herman. Can I ask you a few questions? You Carol Marlin and Meg again?
Yeah, I know them both. Why?
Hey, he was nervous. He was nervous.
Listen, can we talk?
Are you here about the break-in I had the other night?
I didn't have any idea what he was talking about. So, Webb came into the office, and we sat down, and I talked with him.
Mr. Webb. Identify that for me?
Sure, it looks like a piece of a receiving memo.
That your signature right there?
No. I mean, it is, but that's not my handwriting.
Look, Mr. Webb, we looked into you. We know you have issues with John Peake. Listen to me. Listen to me. Don't lie.
Yeah, fine. I have issues with the guy. But Peake is the one with the problem.
You two have Linda Mills in common?
Linda and I are friends. In fact, he's been all over her, but she isn't interested. I know he blames me for it.
Mr. Webb, you have to understand that what we're dealing with is a double homicide. You understand that?
I'm not lying.
All right. I need you to submit a hair sample for us. Will that be okay?
Why? I didn't do anything. Look, okay, when you first came to me, I told you I thought you were there for a break and enter that I reported.
Right.
It was John Peake who broke into my house.
How does John Peake forget to tell the police about this happening out there at Webb's house?
I went to the basement and I saw him trying to leave through the window with this black bag. I went to grab him, but he got away.
Black bag?
Well, he must have stolen something from me because it was making a clanking sound like metal on metal. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm not taking the blame for murder.
Right here. How far is it from John Peake's house to Meg again's house?
About 10 miles?
10 miles. And he'd have to drive over this bridge to get there now, wouldn't he?
The only way to get there is over this bridge.
It's a good place to hide a murder weapon, isn't it?
Old black bag. Why wasn't the letter reported to the police?
Carol didn't make a big deal about it. In fact, she blew it off, actually.
Blew it off.
She wasn't worried about it?
No.
Any idea who or why someone would threaten Carol Marlin?
Well, we've had a bunch of layoffs. Could have been some pissed off employee.
You ever have any complaints about John Peake?
John Peake mentioned that Barry Webb had it out for him when he brought me the letter.
Wait a second. John Peake brought you the letter? Marlin reported it.
No, it was John Peake, and he made a big stink about it.
Any reason to think John Peake has issues with his wife? You know, maybe he was cheating on her, or...
Man, all kinds of shenanigans going around here. I couldn't see either way.
Can I keep this?
Sure.
Thanks, sir.
Too many things with Peake didn't add up. He lied about knowing where Maggie Ginn lived. He lied about the threatening letter. And he didn't tell me about the break-in at Barry Webb's house. I needed something significant to tie Peake to the crime, and then I found it.
John Peake changed his life insurance 2 weeks before his wife was killed.
They both did. She changed hers as well, same day. That's good.
Peake's our guy.
He was going to plant evidence in Webb's basement. He was going to plant the murder weapon there, thinking the police find this invoice with Webb's name on it. They're going straight out there. They're going to search his place. They're going to find a bloody hammer.
No, I'm going to push for a confession.
Well, Ed still have a murder weapon.
It's John Peake that did it. With or without the murder weapon, I get a confession. He's going to jail.
Yeah, but Pete gets smart, stops talking. We don't have enough to press charges.
I'll get the confession.
It was a huge gamble because I knew I got one shot.
I think you planted the invoice in Maggie Ginn's hand.
What invoice?
The one with Barry Webb's signature on it. I think you wrote it, and I think you shoved it into Maggie Ginn's hand right after you killed her.
What? No, I didn't kill her.
I think you lied about the threat letter.
No, I forgot that I was the one who brought it in.
And you failed to tell me you showed up at Barry Webb's house the night your wife was murdered.
Barry had it out for me. I went to his house because I was worried for my wife.
You got an answer for everything, don't you, John? Why didn't you tell me the truth?
I didn't kill her, if that's what you're asking. I love my wife.
Yeah, well, maybe she didn't love you.
Don't you say that. Don't you dare say that!
You're the beneficiary on your wife's life insurance.
Yeah, and she was on
Didn't you change that life insurance policy 2 weeks before she was killed?
People change their life insurance policies.
Oh, so it's just good timing then. You want me to tell you what I think happened? You wanted Carol Marlin gone because you had eyes for Linda Mills. I mean, she looked good. The girl looked good, right? And I get it. Time for a change. You wanted to frame Barry Webb, get him out of the picture, but you weren't expecting him to be home that night. What was in the black bag, John? Huh? Was that the murder weapon?
Everyone suspects the husband.
It's okay, John.
I was scared. She... You might be in charge.
I'm thinking about it.
Knowing it and proving it are two different things, detective. You should be ashamed of yourself.
In Georgia, the best way to get a conviction is physical evidence and a confession. In this case, it was circumstantial evidence. I mean, there were all these circumstances, and what was going to put us over that wall was him admitting to it, and he didn't do it. I felt like I'd failed on the case.
Let's dredge your lake.
Only makes sense. Pete tossed the murder weapon in the drink.
We don't have the manpower. By the time we dredge the lake, which is impossible, by the way, Peak will die of old age. Without a murder weapon, we got nothing. Yeah, I'm aware.
Eddie.
Go for Eddie.
Just got a call from John Peake's father.
He wants to confess. And?
Father says his son's missing. Says Peake left a suicide note.
I had my fill when he wrote this letter and disappeared. And thinking that son of a bitch, and it was just like I was numb for a few minutes.
We'll talk to him. I want to see that note.
If he went off, killed himself, case is closed. I want to see the note because it didn't fit what I knew about John Peake. That he was actually going to go out and kill himself. To me, this was all self-serving, cry on somebody's shoulder BS. I knew he was going to surface, just a matter of when.
Peake's trying to hide the evidence. No way he's committed suicide.
One of the things that I remember thinking about is, what if he's returned to where he ditched that bag? What if it's not in the water? What if it wasn't thrown in a dumpster?
Peake is right here. Think again. Barry Webb was right there. Peake was breaking into Barry Webb's house when he got caught with the black bag.
I think he got rid of it between the drive from Webb's house to home. Because he knows now, hey, the gig's up, he caught me in the basement. Law enforcement's going to be involved out there. I got to do something with it. So maybe he hid it in a temporary place.
We find Peake, we find a murder weapon.
We spent the next 48 hours trying to find John Peake. We didn't have any luck. Around that time, we got the lab results on Barry Webb's hair samples, and he was cleared.
Eddie, some lawyer here to see you? You can call off your search. My client, John Peake, as you can see, is alive and well. Any further questions for Mr. Peake can go through me.
Oh, I'm glad Mr. Peake's alive and well. Wish I could say the same for his wife and Meg again.
We got nothing. So we keep digging.
I screwed up. We're never gonna find that murder weapon, man. It's gone. Because of me, that guy's gonna get away with murder.
It was a burden. I mean, it was a huge problem to me. When it looked like we weren't going to come up with anything else, the anger toward him and what he had done, it was worse. I wanted to provoke a confrontation.
Hey, John. John! Why don't we use some of that insurance money of Carol's? Put on a reward. Catch this son of a bitch, huh? Come, John. John, you know where to find me.
Maggie's family and Carol Marlin's family, and they're frustrated. But in defense of them, I mean, they had a right to be, I think, and because hey, you're the detective, you think he's the killer, he's still walking the street.
found out Pete got remarried, I can remember thinking, well, that SOB. Okay, what a arrogant, condescending piece of crap. What is he thinking? Is he thinking, I got away with it once, I'm gonna get away with it again?
What are you doing? Okay.
You ready?
Yes, I'm
Didn't
ready.
peek?
No, I didn't peek.
Nice!
Oh, thank you, baby. Oh, look at all. Oh, thank you.
Hold on, here we go.
I came home and there she was, I swear. I found her like that. I know everyone thinks the husband did it, but I didn't do anything.
I remember I was sick to my stomach when I first heard that he had killed again. I mean, literally sick to my stomach. He is a master manipulator. He set this thing in motion. But I am flabbergasted. I mean, I am dumbfounded that he has done this again. Done it again in the same county, knowing he's going to have to deal with the same people again. Meaning me. I just caved to the fact that he's a sociopathic killer, and we got to deal with it.
Son of a bitch, his new wife, Casey Pete, dead when he got home.
How convenient. Carol and Maggie are both beaten.
Yeah, with hammers or something. Casey was killed with a shotgun. The back of the head.
She never saw it coming either.
You have physical evidence, there's circumstantial evidence, and then also when you have multiple incidents, multiple crimes committed by the same offender, you can use the similarities, the pattern.
All right. We swapped Peak for gun residue, got nothing.
Of course not. Planned it out.
Just like the first murders, we got no murder weapon.
Pete found Casey dead, he called it in, just like he called in Carol Marlin missing, right?
That's a pattern.
Yeah, but it's not enough to link the two cases together.
All of the circumstances, the dishonesty, the lies, I had charted those.
We need more.
Peak said his wife's purse was stolen. Then Mr. Myers found it, got Peak's number from it, and called him.
Peak said the phone call worried him so much he went home to check on his wife, and that's where he found her dead, shot in the back of the head.
And now he refuses to take a lie detector test.
I wonder why. We need something to tie it all together, or else the DA won't give us an arrest warrant.
I wanted to charge him, but we're dealing with circumstantial evidence. What I felt was overwhelming circumstantial evidence, but in and of itself, circumstantial evidence, and we didn't have that thing that was going to seal the deal.
So,
tell me you found something.
That wasn't a detail. Got nothing to say till my lawyer gets here. I hope you have an expensive lawyer.
He was one lucky son of a bitch for a long time. Did he plan it? Was it methodical? To a certain degree, yes. Was it sloppy? Yes. Did he outthink himself? Yes. Did he outthink us? Nope.
Peak took out a life insurance policy on his second wife, Casey Peak.
She was Carol Marlin.
We got our pattern. Think we can get him on all three murders?
One way to find out.
We had a similarities that it put me in a position where I had enough probable cause to take a warrant in the Carol Marlin Maggie Ginn case.
John Peake, you're under arrest for the murders of Casey Peake, Carol Marlin, and Maggie Ginn. You want to waive your right, John? We talk about it?
We've already talked, detective.
Okay.
It's tough. You know, we got 3 dead women and you know, we can't change that. So I just wish I could have put him in jail sooner. But it didn't work out. And the worst thing about that is we had another victim, and you know, that bothers me. But in the end, you know, we won. And he's where he needs to be. That's it for me. That's all I got. Unless you have other questions.